TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, cautious optimism is reportedly reigning in Jerusalem regarding prospects for an imminent hostage release deal. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visits the Syrian Golan Heights, during the course of which he underscores that Jerusalem will determine the best arrangement that will ensure Israel's security. Turkey is amassing troops along the Syrian border near the Kurdish-majority city of Kobani as Ankara pledges to eradicate the Kurdish-YPG militia. Israel is inching closer to reaching a deal for the release of hostages that have been held captive by the Islamist Hamas terror group for the past 439 days. Nevertheless, despite reported progress in the talks, understandings between Hamas and Israel have yet been reached on the main issues in contention that have prevented a deal to date. These include the IDF presence on the Philadelphia corridor, which separates between the Gaza Strip and Egypt, and the number and plan for releasing hostages. Meanwhile, families of hostages held captive, to particularly include wives and children of men who remain in captivity and who are not within a so-called humanitarian category, despite being civilians, are urging the government in Jerusalem not to give in to any deal unless all hostages are released. Among those demanding the release of all hostages in one stage, rather than merely a number of them, is Sharon Aloni, who was released together with her two little girls in a previous deal after 49 days of Hamas captivity, forcing her and her two little girls to be forcibly separated from their husband and father for the past 390 days.
On the first day of the deal, and after 49 days, the hardest moment of my life came. We were separated from David. We hugged him, and our daughters held on to him with their small hands, not understanding what this goodbye meant. He remained there, alone in the dark tunnels. Since we returned, I have been trying to be strong for Emma and Yuli. But how do you tell your daughters that their father is still there? What is David going through there? A year without us. And now when they talk about a partial deal that leave David and the other men there, I cannot imagine how can this be possible. How can one decide that someone has to be left behind? That every day that he spends there is a death sentence.
It is important to know that amid reports of progress towards a deal, in which only a limited number of hostages are expected to be released in exchange for far-reaching Israeli concessions, CIA Director William Burns has met in Doha today with the Qatari Prime Minister to discuss the outlined agreement. Separately, Hamas officially confirmed the reported progress, noting that in light of the serious and positive talks taking place in Doha today, under the mediation of the Qatari and Egyptian brothers, as they put it, reaching an agreement for a ceasefire and prisoner exchange as possible. Meanwhile, in Washington, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, during a Q&A session at a New York City event, highlighted the need to convert Israel's tactical achievements versus Hamas into long-term strategic endgame.
How do you convert that into a long-term strategic endgame where Israel is secure on a durable basis and where Gaza emerges where Hamas is not in power? And the best way to do that, in judgment, is to have a political solution, a political track alongside the military track, and that starts with the basic concept of essentially trying to make sure that the ordinary civilians of Gaza, the innocent people of Gaza, are not being put in a position where things are so bad that they all become radicalized and you have nothing to work with going forward.
President Biden's national security advisor continued by highlighting the outgoing administration's deep involvement when it comes to the Hamas-instigated war versus Israel, particularly focused on the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip.
There is not a conflict in the world in modern history where as many people in the US government, up to and including the national security advisor, could count for you the daily number of trucks, the crossings, the roadblocks, the obstacles, as in this case. It is under the most intense microscope, understandably, because people are suffering. It means that every single day, I personally am getting a report on the humanitarian situation. I'm getting a list of the things that we need to ask of Israel to try to alleviate it, and working that day in, day out, and never being satisfied, because at the end of the day, in a war zone like this, you always want to be pushing for more.
Sullivan, who is regarded as the most powerful man today in Washington after the outgoing president, further addressed the fluid situation in Syria following the fall of the Assad regime.
First of all, we have to recognize that the minute Damascus fell, ISIS began to look for any opportunity it could take to reconstitute, grow, spread, and ultimately recreate a platform from which to threaten the United States and Americans around the world. And so within hours of Assad falling and HTS rolling into Damascus, the president ordered the US military to take military action against ISIS personnel and ISIS facilities in the central Syrian desert, the Badia, and we're going to have to continue to do that.
It is important to know that Turkey is amassing troops along the Syrian border to include a large concentration of Turkish commandos and artillery forces near the Kurdish-majority city of Kobani, in addition to the Turkish-backed Jaish al-Watani, or National Syrian Army. The evident buildup coincides with Ankara's unambiguous intent to confront the so-called Kurdish-YPG, which Turkey views as an extension of the PKK, which is an internationally designated terror group.
First of all, the elimination of the YPG is our strategic goal. Either they will abolish themselves, or they will be abolished, they will be destroyed. Of course, there are certain parameters. I think it may be good to mention these parameters. Firstly, as I said, even though we have the means and capability to do this, we will wait for our brothers in Syria to eliminate this threat with the steps they will take to ensure their territorial and national integrity.
It is important to know that the Kurdish-YPG is effectively the largest contingent within the US-led Syrian Democratic Forces, which have played a vital part in the Western efforts to eradicate the Islamic State, a significant point of contention between Washington, European capitals, and Ankara.
Şimdi Batılılar kendi vatandaşlarını
The Westerners are using another terrorist organization as guardians in order not to bring ISIS members to their own homeland. The role given to the PKK is the role of the guardian. The PKK received the support it did so far because of their guardians. They hold them here, and they did not care about the cost this created for us and the region. We made this very clear. We said it clearly. When this strategy fails, what they need to do, especially the European states, need to take away their own ISIS elements.
The latter point has been the long-time position of Ankara, as part of which it pushes for Islamic radicals of Islamic State, whose parents immigrated to Europe from the Middle East and beyond, to be absorbed back into European societies. Meanwhile, in Washington, Pentagon Press Secretary Major General Pat Ryder was asked about Minister Hakan Fidan's remarks about Turkey's intentions vis-à-vis the YPG militia in Syria.
Yeah, I don't have a comment to provide on the foreign minister's comment. What I would say is what I've relayed before, which is that the SDF remains an important partner. I think it's important to remember what Daesh or ISIS is capable of, as we've seen in the past, and we all have a vested interest in ensuring that they cannot resurge. And so I know, again, we're speaking with our Turkish counterparts and others in the region as it relates to the challenges associated with ISIS, as well as the SDF and the continued important role they play in preventing a resurgence of ISIS. And so we'll continue to have those conversations.
Turning to the Syrian side of the Golan Heights, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, alongside Jerusalem's top security brass, toured the area, which the IDF has captured for the purpose of guaranteeing the security of Israel's border communities.
I am here on the summit of MT Herman with the Defense Minister, the IDF Chief of Staff, the head of Northern Command, the Director of the ISA, and senior commanders. We are holding this assessment in order to decide on the deployment of the IDF in this important place until another arrangement is found that ensures Israel's security. This is nostalgic for me. I was here 53 years ago with my soldiers in the General Staff Reconnaissance Unit. The place has not changed. It is the same place, but its importance for the security of Israel has only been underscored in recent years, and especially in recent weeks with the dramatic events that have occurred below us in Syria. We will determine the best arrangement that will ensure our security.
Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I would like to start by thanking all of you who stand in support of TV7 Israel, both in prayer and finance. Since TV7 Israel is exclusively donation-based, your support is vital for our continued operations here in Jerusalem. Therefore, if you're blessed by our productions, please consider making a donation. You can do so via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Separately, I would like to encourage you, as ever, pray for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hassan, wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we will see you during our next update. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.